In this episode I work on the slate sidings. I work on both the gardens for the station master's cottage. And I also make a grow patch for the station master's cottage. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 5 of the OO9 layout build. In this episode we're just going to work on the area around the station master's cottage with the 2 gardens at the front and the sidings and a little bit over this side. So hope you all enjoy. Let's get cracking. The area we're going to focus on first is the 2 slate sidings that are next to the station master's cottage. I've already pre-painted the sleepers and the rail sides, so now all we need to do now is ballast these 2 sidings. This is pretty much the same process I used before in my previous episode, so I won't go into too much detail about how I've done all this bit. But it's just a matter of just getting the ballast down and then just getting the ballast to settle between the sleepers. I will occasionally just use a dry brush just to get the ballast to settle between the sleepers, and I'll also occasionally just get the handle of the brush, the wooden handle of the brush, and just tap the top of the rails so the vibrations will help the ballast to settle between the sleepers. I like to get the track ballasted first before I do any scenics around the track. By doing this, the ballast will act as like a first layer of scenics around the track, and then any scenics what are around the track will basically overlap onto the ballast that I've put down. So just create like a nice bit of a blend between the two. It's now time to glue the ballast down. I sprays the ballast with just normal tap water just to break the surface tension, and then the glue I use is 50-50 PVA and water with a little drop of washing up liquid, again just to break the surface tension. I drip the glue down using a pipette, and it goes a section at a time, and then leaves it overnight to dry. I decided to carry on ballasting on the other side as well, up to where the point is. Now when ballasting points, you've got to be extremely careful not to get the ballast stuck in the moving parts, and also not to glue the two changing blades together. I normally just move the tie bar periodically every now and then just to make sure the glue doesn't set between the blades. Right, the ballasting is all done now, apart from a few little touch-up bits here and there. This track was becoming a bit of a pain, and basically it just kept on trying to come up, so all this track had to be re-stuck down and reballasted. So, I've done that, and it's just a few little bits that have been touched up, so just gotta wait for them bits to dry. So our next focus will be on this bit here, where the cottage is going to be here, and then the gardens at the back and the front. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm just going to paint over with a brown undercoat like I did before on the other bits, and then we can start with the top layer, carry on top layers of the scenics. Right, now all the undercoat is now dry, it's now time to start adding the scatter. And the first thing I'm going to do this time round is I'm just going to add a layer of universal ground cover from True to Scale by Specialist Aggregates. I've used this material before in the TT120 layout, and it's really good material to use. So we're going to be using this first on this bit, and then we'll cover it in green scatter and really set the scene off. So let's get cracking. Yeah, I got a bit carried away there. Uh, once I got started, I just carried on. Um, the specialist aggregates that I put down, that should have been brown, but it had more of a green tinge. So, not a problem. I just improvised and carried on. So I've done layer on that one, and then I've done some sprinkles of the what's blended turf. Yeah, yeah, just gave a sprinkle of some different textures. So just gotta wait for it all to dry now. What I've done with what I poured on it was basically the watered down mixture of PVA and washing up liquid, the same mixture that I used for the ballasting, just to seal in the extra layers that I put on. So just gotta wait for that to dry, then we'll see what happens. This part of the layout is really starting to look great now. I even gave the cottage a bit of a makeover and added a couple of LEDs inside the cottage to light up the cottage. But there's still a fair bit to do on this bit. I'm now going to focus on making the pathway from the cottage door that will go through the garden, along the crossing, and then maybe up there and a bit to the station, because this will be the station master's cottage. So the station master will be, will live in the area, so he's close by to where the station will be at the other end of the layout. So I'm just going to get cracking with the path, and then we'll crack on with the rest of the bits for the scene. Right, so this is where we're going to be having the path. The path will come from the front door, just across the crossing here. It'll go along the side there, and it'll head off to the station down the other end, and maybe a path up there later on. To do this, I'm going to be back to using the true to scale from Specialist Aggregates, if I could get it in the camera. It's a bit weird trying to work out where the camera is. But yeah, it's the Universal Trail, this one. So we're going to be using this to make the paths. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the cottage very carefully. Just like that. As you can see, that's sort of like the skeleton for the two LEDs. Got a LED there, LED there. Did have a bit of a problem of the LED light bleeding through the card of the model. Now, how I combated this was I just got a small nail file. I just lightly roughed up the bulbs, and it turns the bulbs into like frosted glass. So basically, because it turns the surface of the bulb into frosted glass, the light has a more difficult time to travel. So it makes the light less piercing, and it helps to stop the light bleeding through the building. So I'm digressing. Right, so we've got to make path along. So I'll just get my glue, which is over here. Brush. Now the power for the layout is all off at the moment because we're going to be going directly on the track here. So make sure all the power is turned off. So we want to guesstimate where the front door would be. I think it's somewhere around there. Yeah, somewhere around here. So that's where we're going to place our first blob of glue there. So basically where I'm placing the glue is where the path's going to be. That's when it starts into the track. Now a little bit later on I do have like a bit of fencing that I made up that will separate this bit. I just got to make some sort of gate or something. But like I said, this is the station master's property basically, so I think he's going to be very much aware of those trains that come round and when they're coming round. I don't think it's going to be too much of a worry for him. Right, so path, I'll go up there. So I think for now, because you know, we haven't got that far along that way yet. I think I'll just end where the path will be there. I have to just remove some of these hedgerows here. That'll be fine. Right, so now I've got the glue in place. So now it's time to add the universal trail. And I've got the right colours. I do like this stuff. This is it's really good stuff. Please excuse me, I've been in the way. Just a bit of the awkward bit. Looking okay. And just make sure it's not on the tops of the rails. Lightly just go like that. Creates a bit of a groove for the wheel flanges. Just get my spray bottle of water. Same process as before. Just want to, not the camera. Just want to dampen it down. That'll break the surface tension. When I put the next layer of glue on, it won't pop up. Unfortunately, at this bit, I didn't really think about where the camera was on my tablet when I was filming this bit. So, as you can see, I've accidentally put the bag of specialist aggregates in front of the camera. So, we'll just skip this bit and go straight to the bit when it's not got the bag in front. Now we can see what's going on. I've decided to just add some universal trail just between the two tracks of the siding, just to break up the ballast a bit between the two tracks. I also decided to add some sprinkles of the universal ground cover from specialist aggregates, just to create another layer of scenics. With the scenics, every layer you do adds that little bit more to the scene. I'm now adding some blended turf green blend from Woodland Scenics, just to add a bit of variety to the ground cover. My aim is to make these two sidings look a little bit unkept and overgrown. Because these sidings are just there to hold slate wagons ready for loading, maintenance on these two sidings would not be as vital as the maintenance on the actual main running line. Having areas like this on the model railway can really tell the story about the model railway. The story I have for this railway is a railway that is just built for purpose. You know, with the slate mine on the other end of the layout, this was just a railway that was put there to get to the slate mine, and also occasionally runs passenger trains, but the main operation is to basically pick up the slate from the slate mine. I'm now adding some coarse turf light green to the end of the sidings where the buffer stops are, again to add to the theme of being unkept and overgrown. I've made it look a bit more overgrown by where the buffers are, because the slate wagons wouldn't really go that far down right up to the buffers, so there's a good chance that foliage will grow more around those areas than they would closer up the siding. Now it's just the same process again of just spraying the area down with water in a spray bottle just to break the surface tension, and then just covering with a layer of watered down PVA with a little bit of washing up liquid, just to seal all these layers in. I'm still waiting for these few bits to dry, but what I'm doing now is thinking about what I'm doing here along this bit, and the plan I have is making a retaining wall using spare railway sleepers. So never throw your sleepers away, and never throw any spare rails away, because you'll always find a use for them. So the plan with this is I'm just going to super glue them to the bottom there all the way along, so this will all be sleeper retainable. So I'll crack on with that, and I'll crack on with that in a time lapse. It's a bit more trickier than I thought, so I'll crack on with this bit off of camera and then I'll get back to you. It's now some time later and the sleeper retaining wall is now all finished. I decided just to carry on the rest of the way, just to create a boundary around the front garden and towards the back. I now have to fill in the sides where the land needs to come up to the retaining wall. So this is what I'll be looking at next. I'm going to be using some of these flowery tufts just to fill out some of the edges along the front between the main track and the siding. But before I can add any of the scenics to this area, I've got to paint all these sleepers with some mixed brown acrylic. So I'll do this now in a time lapse. Once the paint was dry, I continued on with the scenics in the front garden. First thing I need to do is fill up the gaps to form the land up to the retaining wall. I started off with some flowery tufts along the side and then filled out the rest of the way using the universal ground cover to build up the height. I've done this all the way around the cottage just to fill the gaps between the cottage and the sleeper retaining wall. I then started adding some coarse turf around the base of where the cottage will be. I also added some coarse turf in various other areas, for example around the front where the retaining wall is, and just a little bit overgrown over the top towards the track. It was now time to add some flowers to the garden. I bought some different coloured powders that represent flowers and I just sprinkle them over some of the bushes and towards the sides to look like flower beds. The coloured powders in the garden to look like flowers really make the garden stand out. I continued on with the bushes at the top by just adding some of the red powder to the bushes to look like berries. Again, it's another layer of scenics that really make this area stand out. Once I was happy with it, it was time to seal all this in with the usual method of watered down 50/50 PVA, basically the same mixture I use on the ballast. I covered this all over the areas where I added extra layers of scenics. This will just seal all the extra scenic layers in. Now I've finished all the front garden. So all this bit here, Also finished all the sidings. Yeah, I really love the sleeper retaining wall. Yeah, it's really come out alright. With the sidings, I've had some little patches of overgrown bits, and just added a bit of the universal trail just in the middle. So where the buffer stops are, yeah, I made it so it's a bit overgrown. And towards the end of the sidings, around this bit, I dry brush some black acrylic on where the siding ends, well, where the siding starts. If you think the train will be pushing slate wagons in, the train would stop around this sort of area around here, and the same with over here. I've also, on the point tie bar, I've dry brushed some black acrylic there as well. Do you think this would be, in real life, this bit will be pretty greasy? So I was trying to make it look a bit greasy. So yeah, that's the garden, and added a few little bits of red powder to these bushes. Yeah, give a little bit of extra colour. So now I'm going to go to the back of the cottage now, and the next bit we've got to look at is the back garden. Now this fencing is fence I've made myself. I'll do a small video on how I made this fence. You know, it's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple way, and it's cost effective. So I'll do a short video on how to do that on a later date. But today I've had a delivery today, and this I've got some cabbages. There's the packet. Got some cabbage heads, and this is what I've been waiting on to do in this bit of the garden here. So I'm going to have a couple of grow patches with some cabbages. So that's what I'm going to work on next. Right, so this is the back garden where the grow patch is going to be. I've done 2 lines for where the cabbages are going to go. There's going to be 6 in each row. This row of 6 are going to be near enough like fully grown cabbages, whereas this row, there's going to be 6 cabbages where they're just still growing, sort of thing. So, in theory, them ones would have been planted first, and then these ones would have been planted, a little bit more down the line. So 6 in each. Use universal ground cover, on a strip of PVA glue that I brushed on. I just dropped the ground cover on top of the glue, and I've made 6 holes ready for the cabbages. So how I'm going to glue the cabbages in, I'll just use some super glue. Test fit this first. Ideally, I think it needs some tweezers, but I don't currently have any. So, yeah, I think that'll look okay. So, just glue that one in. And not the camera. A bit of super glue on the stalk. Just gently push cabbage in. Get some of these leaves to come up. Like so. Right, so that's the station master's cottage scene pretty much finished. We've got all the cabbages in. Got some nice flower beds there. Appears to be someone in because the light's on. Add some extra bushes as well to cover up the fencing a bit. I made path with the universal trail, just going around the grow patch there. If we go around to the front garden, what all the front garden looks like now. Really happy with the results. Looks really great. You've got all the bushes there. If we go a little bit further up, there's a little bit of a hint to what's in the next episode. So just kind of wrap this episode up so it's not another long one. The last one was quite long, an hour and 6 minutes. This one is about 40, knocking to 40 minutes now. So I don't want to make it too long. So thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope I've inspired some people. So again, thanks for watching. If you watched this far, if you could hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, be much appreciated. So till next time, it's the end of episode 5, and you all take care, and bye bye.